Let's go through question 1 in this video. So we have there an expression and we want to write the range over which this expression is positive, negative or 0. So minus x minus 1 squared times x squared minus 2 divided by 2e to the power of x minus 4. Okay, this is going to be a slightly long question, so we'll divide it in two parts. In this video we'll solve each term of this expression separately. In the second video we'll put them all on a table to see what the signs are. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Minus x minus 1 squared. Let's take the first term. Minus x minus 1 to the power of 2. Now look, we have here the power of 2. Anything that's going to go in this bracket, any value for x, the result is going to be a positive number because it's to the power of 2. But look that we have the negative sign in front, and because we have the negative sign in front, the whole expression, this whole expression, is always going to be negative. It's always going to be negative. Now, there's an exception. What would be the exception? Well, the exception is, what if the expression is 0? So we have to write that. The expression can be 0, the result can be 0 when x would equal to 1. When x equals to 1, because we would have 1 minus 1, which is 0, to the power of 2. And the negative sign doesn't affect anything here. So that would be 0. But then it will always be less than 0, strictly less than 0, if x is definitely not 1. So if x takes any other value, we will have a negative result because of this negative sign in front. Okay, so that was the first part of the expression. Let's go to the second one, x squared minus 2. So let's take more space, x squared minus 2. X squared minus 2. What do we have here? Well, let's see. When can this be positive? So when can this be positive? It can be positive when x squared minus 2 is positive. When is that happening? When x squared has to be greater than 2, because we take the negative 2 on the other side. Now, x squared has to be greater than 2. What does that mean? What kind of range do we have here? Well, either x is greater than square root of 2, or x is less than minus square root of 2. How do we do that? Well, look, because we have x to the power of 2 here, it means we have to take the square root of both sides to see the ranges. And the question is, why do we have this range of negative square root of 2? Because when we take the square root, we always have two possibilities. Why is that? Because a positive and a negative number to the power of 2 gives a positive result. So when we have here square root of x to the power of 2, the result is going to be plus minus a number. So in our case, the result is positive square root of 2, and let's actually check it. If we give a value like square root of 3, square root of 3 to the power of 2 is going to be 3. Well, if square root of 3 to the power of 2 is 3, 3 is greater than 2, and that's what we want. Let's take a value less than minus square root of 2. Let's say minus square root of 3. Well, minus square root of 3 to the power of 2 is also 3, and 3 is greater than 2. So if it's confusing to understand when we have this positive and negative range, think of it this way. When we have a power of 2, have a signal in your mind that, okay, power of 2, it has to be positive and negative range. And then give values. Of course, the mechanics is that you will have greater than a number and less than the negative of number. But give some values like we did just now with square root of 3 and minus square root of 3 to prove yourself that you're on the right way. Okay, let's go on. When can this thing be equal to 0? So x squared minus 2 equals to 0. Let's go back here. X squared minus 2 has to equal to 0. Well, this equals to 0 when x squared minus 2 equals to 0, which means that x squared should equal to 2. Now, when is x squared equal to 2? Well, either x equals to square root of 2 or x equals to minus square root of 2. And indeed, if we check, square root of 2 to the power 2 is 2, and minus square root of 2 to the power 2 is also equal to 2. And the last range would be, when is this value less than 0? Well, x squared minus 2 is less than 0 when x squared is less than 2. When is that possible? Well, either x is less than square root of 2 or x is greater than minus square root of 2. And it's the same logic as before. Let's have a look. We have the square, the power of 2, and it means we have to take the square root of both sides. So x is less than square root of 2. Let's say square root of 1. Square root of 1 to the power of 2 would be equal to 1, and 1 is less than 2, so that works. And let's take a value from here. What's a number greater than negative square root of 2? Well, if we take negative square root of 1, that's closer to 0, so that's greater than negative square root of 2. This works, this value works. And if we take the power of 2, as we did in this case, the result will be just 1, and 1 is again less than 2, so this range works too. Again, this is just to prove ourselves that we're doing it right. Okay, and now the last part, we have the division. Remember, we have x squared minus 2 divided by 2 times e to the power of x minus 4. So we can write this division as a term. We could write that we have 1 over 2 times e to the power of x minus 4. Now what kind of ranges do we have here? Let's see. 1 is positive, right? 1 is a positive number. So when can this expression be positive? It can be positive when the denominator is going to be positive. So we take 2 times e to the power of x minus 4 has to be positive, which means that 2 times e to the power of x has to be greater than 4. If we cancel out 4 and 2, we have a 2 left. So e to the power of x has to be greater than 2. And when e to the power of x is greater than 2, how do we deal with these situations? Remember, because we have e to the power of x, we can take ln of both sides. So that means that ln of e to the power of x is greater than ln of x. And what happens to ln e to the power of x? Well, that is just x. On this side it should have been ln of 2 from here, ln of 2. So ln times ln of e to the power of x is just x. X should be greater than ln of 2. That's one range. That's just for the first part, when it is greater than 0. Now let's see, when is this less than 0? When is this value negative? Well, it is negative when 2 times e to the power of x minus 4 is less than 0, which means that 2 times e to the power of x is less than 4. Again, 2 and 4 cancel out. Here we're left with a 2, which means that e to the power of x is less than 2, and it's going to be just the opposite of this sign. X should be less than ln of 2, and that's our second range. Now, can this value ever be 0? Let's see. We have a division. Division by 0 is undefined. So the only possible way to have something related to 0 is that this division is undefined when the denominator is 0. So 2 times e to the power of x minus 4 equals to 0, which means that 2 times e to the power of x equals to 4. E to the power of x equals to 2, because 2 and 4 cancel out again. And when e to the power of x equals to 2, the range where, or the value better said, where this expression is undefined is when x equals to ln of 2. And that's it. We are done. We wrote the ranges for all three expressions, for all three terms, better said. In the next video, we'll actually put them on the table and see what the results are.